Hey everyone, and welcome to a Friday episode of Dungeons & Dragons Horror Stories. Being really into stuff isn't inherently bad, but sometimes, some people can take things to extreme levels. Much like the case in today's D&D horror story. But first, if you like what I do here and aren't already subscribed, why not do so and click the bell to be notified whenever I upload a new video. Plus, it makes Nipsey really happy.
Yes, please subscribe. I really like subscribers.
You got good taste, Nipsey. Now, let's get into the story. Player is obsessed with elves. Also thinks she's the main character. By Anonymous. Fake names are used. The DM, Misty. Problem player, Luzamine. Other players, Guzma and Cynthia. Me, Indigo. Friend who was DMing another campaign Luzamine was in, Gloria. So around this time last year, or maybe 2 years ago, somewhere around there, I was a player in a campaign using homebrew settings and systems. The plot was an SCP-esque survival horror, with a twist. Our party consisted of the captured beings trying to escape the facility. It was a mix between traditional online roleplay and earlier editions of D&D. The traditional roleplay was to make up for the lack of a physical board, as this was done through Discord, text-based for archival purposes, in case the DM wanted to do a callback to anything. We were all friends who had done this before, so we assumed this would be absolutely no problem. However, a friend who hadn't joined any of Misty's campaigns before wanted to join. Enter Luzamine. Luzamine really liked elves. A lot of people definitely have a default race to play as, yeah. I mean, when I'm in fantasy campaigns, I usually play an Aasimar, as they're fun to draw. But there was something off about how much Luzamine liked elves. It felt almost obsessive, like elves began to become the only conversation topic, though we all just assumed that she was just excited at the time. Despite the setting allowing for essentially any homebrew race that's balanced, and the fact that no one else was using traditional D&D races. I was an android rogue, borrowing from tiefling stats, Guzma was a skeleton, Cynthia was a humanoid owl creature, etc. Though Luzamine made an elf. We figured it would be fine. There technically was nothing wrong with it, and we just assumed that she was new to homebrew and was using her default race, or a recycled character, to ease herself in. Her elf rogue also has a pet companion, an undead dog thing. That will be important for later. Session 0 wraps up, and everything seems okay. We all get familiar with each other's characters. Cynthia, however, was not present, as she did not join the campaign until far later. Session 1 begins, and Luzamine continues to talk in the out-of-character chat about how much she loves her character. A little weird, but I mean, I love talking a lot about my characters too. But it was still odd that this wasn't covered in Session 0. My character makes their entrance. They remain hidden out of sight, still suspicious of the group. Technically, nobody is supposed to know that they're there without some kind of perception check. Luzamine's elf immediately says something along the lines of, "Hello, Melon, I can hear you breathing." She goes to the out-of-character channel to tell me that Melon means friend in Elvish. My character steps out of their hiding place, making some snarky, lighthearted comment about how they don't need to breathe, and then the elf says something like, "I'm an elf. My enlarged ears could detect your presence." I brushed this off. As Mary Sueish as it felt, it wasn't that important. I kept my guard up though. The campaign otherwise goes smoothly for a while, aside from the elf always pointing out that she's an elf. "Well, as an elf, it's different when you're an elf. You feel persecuted? As an elf, I know how that feels." Yada yada yada. Every single scene. The elf's dog began to turn into some kind of passive murder hobo, who tried to immediately attack every villain Misty introduced. It backfired, obviously, but then Luzamine would get genuinely upset that the DM wouldn't let her zombie dog kill every single NPC that was not a good guy. She would passively aggressively post things like, "LOL, villain is lucky that they survived that." or Dog was probably going easy on them, haha, etc. At this point, Misty, Guzma, and I already have a private chat open where we're contemplating what on earth we just walked into. Not to mock, but just out of genuine concern for the future of the campaign. In our server, we also just had some general chatting areas, just to hang out. Talk about characters, the campaign, or even just what you had for lunch. Chill stuff. Luzamine starts implying that she's attracted to elves. Like, really attracted to elves. LOL, isn't Legolas pretty here? I have an elf problem. Or, I just designed a pretty elf lass for another campaign. I'd smooch her, LOL. Misty, Guzma, and I are now in full what the fuck mode. We knew she'd make our lives hell if we kicked her out too, as we knew she didn't handle disagreements well. And at the time, none of us really saw her as a mean person. We know better now, of course. Just kind of bad at roleplay. But as a self-proclaimed empath, Luzamine took everything incredibly personally. If you disagreed with her on something, or say, kicked her from a campaign, she'd vanish for days, no matter how mundane. Finally, we were honestly curious to see where this was going. Again, not to laugh or poke fun or anything, just to see if, hopefully, she'd improve. We just wanted to get through this. At this point, we also had kind of an unspoken agreement to redo the campaign without her in the future. Not maliciously, just so the world stayed between our circle, like it always had before. Misty contacts me. We discuss a plot twist where my player character disappears mysteriously, before the reveal that they're being kept hostage by the villain as bait. A little cliche, but still fun and adds some tension. Plus, I was going to have a busy week, so that meant I didn't have the energy to participate anyways. I could just watch as a spectator. And yeah, Luzamine completely ignores the plot point being set up. Instead, she begins trying to make the story about her character, dropping the reveal that her dog was a shape-shifting ancient necromancer god who wild-shaped into a dog. And every time someone out of character was like, hey, what about Ingo's character who vanished? She just ignored it. Around this time, someone who's been a longtime friend of both Luzamine and I joined the campaign. Enter Cynthia, who's admittedly a far more skilled writer and roleplayer than me. Despite being friends with her, I definitely admit I was a little intimidated by her skill. Her character's vibes were what Luzamine probably wanted to do. An anthropomorphic owl creature who was a demonologist, and her travel companion, a mimic who sounded like the Flying Dutchman. She had both characters crash a scene, with Misty's permission, while the Indiana Jones theme blasted from a boombox. It was hilarious and glorious. Once she made her character and joined, she usually managed to roll the plot back on track pretty seamlessly, much to Misty and everyone else's relief. And she managed to reveal more about her character in a way that complemented the plot. A wild contrast to Luzamine's DeviantArt crapfest. This makes more sense in context, I think. It was pretty self-inserty, but in a deeply uncomfortable way. However, the spotlight ended up off of Luzamine and her hot elf chick too long. Luzamine starts scripting encounters in the roleplay segments without warning, and only doing so when Misty was specifically introducing a major plot point. And scripting encounters that aren't player character introductions is, you know, the DM's job. At this point, Cynthia had hit my direct messages. I don't recall exactly what the message was about, but something like, hey, Ingo, I know Luzamine is our friend, but do you feel weird about this too? So of course, she immediately gets added to the group chat with Misty, Guzma, and I. We decided it was best to just push the plot forward, whether Luzamine liked it or not. All goes smoothly within the campaign for a while, but outside, outside, Luzamine talks about how she wants to get cosmetic surgery to have elf ears. She rewrites historical events, usually regarding colonization or the US civil rights movement, with elves instead of real marginalized people. She makes a homebrew spell to turn a human into an elf that includes turning them whiter. I genuinely wish that I was making this up, but no, elf fetish chick is real and out there, somewhere. The campaign is beginning to draw to a close after several months. My character had to be haphazardly reintroduced, unfortunately, as Luzamine's behavior wouldn't allow for an uninterrupted big reveal. I figured that was fine. I'd just fix it when we redid the campaign. Halfway through the second to last encounter with the BBEG, she reveals the shapeshifter was a Balrog, and has it try to wreck the building and kill said BBEG. Guzma found this hilarious, and wasn't afraid to have her character express this. Thankfully, Luzamine didn't notice. The private group chat is in maximum overdrive right now. We're trying to figure out how to get the plot back where it was supposed to go. Keep in mind, none of us were exactly seasoned players at the time. However, super shortly after that session wrapped up, Luzamine starts vaguely venting about how bad people are bad people, or something. It turns out, she got kicked out of a sci-fi homebrew campaign hosted by my friend Gloria. Gloria is a super talented DM, but his work covers a lot of dark topics that are not for the weak of heart. Misty's campaign was more horror game-esque dark, while Gloria's campaigns often handle dark real-world topics like cults, queerphobia, religious trauma, violence stemming from bigotry, drugs, etc. He handles these topics amazingly well, and with a lot of respect and care, but he also gives players joining these campaigns warning that he's going to cover these topics, so they have a chance to back out if it's triggering. Luzamine accepted and joined the campaign, agreeing to the terms and conditions, and still got pissed off at him for covering these topics anyways. And I was actually a spectator in this campaign. If you're wondering, yes, her characters were pseudo-elves. I would say her participation in this campaign deserves a horror story of its own, but it's similar to what happened here. Trying to be the main character, attacking NPCs, etc. She demanded Gloria should change his lore because it made her personally uncomfortable, and that if he didn't, he was an awful human being who didn't care about others. Keep in mind, she saw the content warnings and still agreed to joining. And oh boy, that's why she was using our campaign server as a therapy group all of a sudden. We, of course, take Gloria's side for obvious reasons. We all know Gloria, and know that he wouldn't hurt a fly, aside from self-defense. We don't call Luzamine names or anything, we just try to defuse the situation. Luzamine gets pissed, and she storms out of the server too, not before making some horrible accusations towards Gloria that I refuse to describe here for how vile they were. Feel free to guess. She then goes into my direct messages again and starts treating me like her therapist. Why just me? No idea. I'm guessing she went through everyone else first, because she said something like, "I lost all my friends because I called someone out for being mean. I'm sorry for bothering you, Ingo, but I don't know who to talk to. I feel awful." Now, I later discovered this is what she did to her other friends whenever she was even mildly inconvenienced. Someone disliked a movie she liked, practiced a religion she didn't like, etc. I'm guessing it was to act soft again and get people warmed back up to her, but I'm not sure. Of course, given the awful things she said about Gloria and how guilt-trippy Luzamine tended to be, I just blocked her. We were able to wrap up the campaign before beginning to plan how we'd redo it. A few months later, someone found another one of Luzamine's social medias, and she had made an account for her original story she planned to publish online that was just entirely plagiarized from Gloria's campaign, down to every detail. She stole his NPCs, his world building, his lore, his plot points, all of it. Except she removed everything that she didn't personally like and made herself insert the savior of everything and everyone who smited all evildoers. She hated redemption arcs for some reason. Like, she legitimately thought you were a morally bad person if you wrote one. We didn't find this out until way later though. Someone from Gloria's campaign anonymously called her out on it. I read it, and again, no insults, no name calling, just a polite request to stop stealing someone's hard work. She proceeded to type up a full 2 paragraphs or so about how this was a coping mechanism for me, and that we made her want to get a toaster bath and gave her gender dysphoria. She also said that we got her institutionalized, all before finishing off with a wannabe Charles Dickens phrase. You have earned the title of being my abusers. Let this word of damnation cut through your soul and pierce your hearts like a knife. And this is paraphrasing. It was even more dramatic than that, I believe. And from there, a few people who knew her opened up about how she tried to bully them or push them into adding elves and dragons into their stories, regardless of genre. Sci-fi, fantasy, grimdark, etc. One person even had her try to push her into adding elves into a Star Wars fanfic, of all things. But other than that, we've all been free of the Scourge of Luzamine, the elf fetish lady. And I hope you all will be as well. And finally, as mentioned before, keep in mind that none of us other than Luzamine were seasoned roleplayers. Aside from her, we were all still in high school, so yeah, that's why the whole situation is far more awkward than it could have been. We basically never had done this before, and yes, we definitely could have handled it better, but it's a horror story regardless, and felt fitting for this sub. No need to treat this like am I the asshole. I know nobody here is perfect. TLDR, bunch of teenagers let a person who claims to be good at D&D into their campaign, panic when she actually sucks at roleplay, and is generally kind of a creep. She blows up every campaign she joins, before plagiarizing and calling former party members abusers for some reason. Also really, really into elves. Honestly, I had no problem with Luzamine at the beginning of the story. Sure, she was a little overboard with her excitement for elves, but I would hardly call that a horror story on its own. But then she started pulling all that crap after the spotlight was taken off of her character, like running roleplay encounters as if she was the DM. Then there was the point where the obsession with elves made her want to actually get cosmetic surgery, which I don't really have a problem with body mods of any sort. It's your body, you do what you want. But then there's the fact that she also rewrote history to make the civil rights movement about elves. I'm not sure if she was making a fantasy fanfic of reality, or if she actually thought that that was real. And if that's the case, it just shows how delusional she was. Though the point that really grinds my gears is when she badmouthed another DM for having things that she didn't like in this darker themed game, even though all of the content that would be in it was warned about beforehand. Not to mention the plagiarism. Then there was the blaming her friends for making her want to self-delete and causing her dysphoria. It sounds like she never mentioned being any flavor of trans person, so how are they supposed to know if she was? I'm pretty sure her being institutionalized was of her own doing, not her friends. Thankfully, it sounds like OP and their friends no longer have to deal with all of that, and hopefully their remake of that campaign is going well. Have you ever had someone in a game take things to the level of obsession? If so, tell us how you handled it in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the video, why not give it a like? It really does help the channel grow. As always, I appreciate all of you, and hope all of your rolls are natural 20s. Until next time.